The opening scene of Verdi's La Traviata, as the party in Violetta Valerie's house in Paris gets underway. Ileana Cotrubach and Placido Domingo took the main roles of Violetta and Alfredo in this recording made in Munich in 1976. Domingo later wrote in his autobiography that Kleiber's musical and dramatic insights, analytical abilities, technique, and methods of explaining himself make him the greatest conductor of our day. Indeed, Carlos Kleiber's magnetic personality and inspirational music making captured the hearts and the imagination of the world's most demanding singers who were fortunate enough to be chosen by him to work with him, just in the way that he captivated orchestras and audiences. But now, with singers, there was even an extra dimension. Over and above the substantial amount of extra rehearsals to the norm for the singers, the orchestra and the staging that Kleiber always insisted on when he conducted opera, he also had to have a long time discussing the music individually with the singers, both before the full rehearsal period and even in between rehearsals.
We were working every day and searching for new expression and new phrasing and so on, and it was wonderful, really wonderful. And he needed all this time to know the person and to know the emotional impact of a person in such a role. And it was very important for him and also for us to know each other. And then when the performance came, it was like, I don't know, we had the feeling that we can fly. It was just, well, if I can say this, he drove me or he worked with us. I had the feeling that I could surpass my possibility to go beyond my limits. And in fact, I did, because after the performance of Traviata with Kleiber, or in the way we worked it together, it was unbelievable. And so it will stay for me the rest of my life.
In Act 3 of La Traviata, Violetta, heartbroken and longing for Alfredo, whom she had to give up after his father Giorgio had forced her into doing so, is now dying of consumption. She receives a letter from Giorgio and she reads it out aloud to herself. "You kept your promise. The duel took place. The Baron was wounded, although he is recovering. Alfredo is abroad, and I have explained to him that you sacrificed your relationship to satisfy me. He is coming back to ask for your forgiveness. I shall come too. Take care of yourself. You deserve a better future. Giorgio Germo." But it's too late. Violetta knows her life will be over very soon. And in Addio del Passato, she says goodbye to the brief happiness and beautiful dreams of the past, and she asks God to forgive her for her mistakes. Although Carlos Kleiber was so very specific indeed in his demands of singers, he wanted them to give their own interpretations too. And that's one vital reason why his opera performances were so dramatically spontaneous.
One day with asking me, oh Ileana, would you like to try this something which Callas has done? And for his pleasure, because I respected him and I admire him a lot, his personality, his musicality, and so his artistry. And I said, of course I will do it. And I've done it. And I did it once or twice in the rehearsal. And in the end he came and said, no Ileana, do it as you have done it. Because, of course, it's to imitate, I couldn't imitate Callas, of course not, but maybe the way of some new breed or some other phrasing or something. But then he saw that it was not good for me. And so he said, no, do it as you have done it before.
Placido Domingo singing Alfredo with Ileana Cotrubash's Violetta here was Carlos Kleiber's virtually exclusive choice for the title role of Verdi's Otello. And in his autobiography he wrote, "Every time Carlos Kleiber conducts that opera, a transfiguration takes place in the pit. It's as if he is playing every instrument. He creates the entire atmosphere with his body. He lives every role. He is an impressionist who is somehow able to indicate every touch of colour." Well, I experienced that firsthand when I played in the orchestra for Carlos Kleiber's Otello performances at Covent Garden in 1980. And for that run of performances, he had selected Margaret Price as his Desdemona. She was to be his Isolde the following year, when he began a very long-running task of recording the enormously different repertoire of Wagner, his opera Tristan und Isolde.
My remembrance of him is definitely the Tristan and Isolde, because we worked so closely with each other over it. And I was living in Paris at the time, and we were in, not daily contact, but almost weekly contact. He'd phone to find out how things were going and write little cards and sort of say, listen, on page so-and-so, don't take any notice of that silly old fool mottle that's put that in, but this is the right note. And sent me a score which is absolutely riddled with marks that he wanted me to think of and to do for him. And when I went then to Munich to rehearse with him, he was really astonished that I'd actually taken in everything that he'd specifically asked for. And he was very pleased, he was very happy with the works that I'd done.
The very specially creative collaboration between Carlos Kleiber and Margaret Price in Tristan und Isolde is a story in itself, and it was told to me some years ago by the man who in fact was responsible for initiating the collaboration, Professor Dr. Hans Hirsch, the former Director of Artists and Repertoire at Deutsche Grammophon. Hans Hirsch recalled, "There was an atmosphere in the recording that was very special and I think unique. When Margaret Price sang sah mir in die Augen in Act 1, when Isolde sings her narration to Brangäne, it was really incredible to hear the beauty and feeling of in die Augen. Isolde's narration to Brangäne takes place when she relates to her how she was going to kill the wounded Tristan as he had killed her husband in battle. But when he looked into my eyes, sah mir in die Augen, she was filled with pity for his suffering, starting the doomed relationship of love and death between Tristan and Isolde in Wagner's great opera. It had been Hans Hirsch's idea to suggest to Carlos Kleiber that he engage Margaret Price for the role of Isolde. When Carlos Kleiber finally, after deliberation, decided that Margaret Price would be the ideal singer, it became another telling illustration of how it came about that Kleiber chose his ideal singers and how those singers were to find him their ideal conductor.